influencer by accident, but a very good one nonetheless. Today we're going to talk about, you guessed it, all things health and fitness. But I really want to. We were chatting before this. The goal is to try and simplify fitness as much as possible within the nuances that are always within that whole arena. So we're going to do our best. And I think this would be a really good episode. So, Jenny, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and why you're so passionate about this and how you got into it, the whole thing?
Yeah, so I am a trainer. I have a virtual training app that I'm one of those. I kind of go with whatever doors are open. I walk through them, and I was blessed to open up my own virtual fitness app where I train men and women all over the world, and it's been amazing. But I'm also in the medical sales field and consulting field. So
Cool.
I've been doing that for over 20 years. I personal trained in college, kind of always stayed fit, and you were saying accidental influencer. While I was a medical salesperson, I had a lot of friends who just knew me as the girl that goes to the gym all the time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I would have a lot of questions about fitness and what kind of exercise and what kind of modifications and nutrition, all this stuff. And so because I was getting all of these questions constantly, I thought maybe there's a way to use social media to post these things for my girlfriends instead of saying the same thing over and over, or taking one friend to the gym at a time. So I said, "Hey guys, there's some 15-minute workouts online. You can blend them, whatever you want." About 3 months later, I had 1,000 followers, and I'm a zennial or what I'm going to call it. I didn't even know that people followed strangers for fitness. I had no
Oh,
idea.
yeah.
And I'm like, people are this is like a thing. So now I'm like officially, I've been doing it for 7 years, and it really fills my cup. But yeah, so I own my training app is called Salt Training App, formerly Get Salty, and it stands for Strength, Agility, Longevity Training. So my focus is really helping people understand the training towards metabolic health and
Mm,
longevity instead of just getting a snatched waist. It's not about that. It's about building skeletal muscle, really starting to build up that mitochondrial response and things like that. So that's a little bit about me. But my medical sales background has kind of converted into a metabolic consulting part of it. I was blessed to have a job as a Alzheimer's dementia prevention using AI business development executive,
wow.
and through that. I was able to talk to physicians at a very high level about a disease state that they really don't know that much about. It's getting to be better, but dementia and Alzheimer's 4 years ago was one of these things that, well, if they get it, it's all downhill from here.
Right.
And we started realizing, no, this is a metabolic thing for most people. Usually it's just because they're dealing with sugar insensitivities, they're dealing with low skeletal muscle, things like that. So let's look at the whole picture and let's start preventing these patients that are on their road to that instead of dealing with a patient with dementia, which is it's almost difficult or impossible to reverse. So let's get them to prevent that. But so that kind of in a nutshell is me and where I am.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, we have to go into that because that is such an interesting topic. The I want you let's talk a little bit more about that. I want you to explain a little bit more about what's going on there, or as
Mhm.
far as we know, and what's changed over the past few years. Because it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong. There's type 3 diabetes, and is that kind of the road that you're lending toward there? Is that it's really not so much of just like a, well, if you get it, you get it, and it's genetic and this, that, and the other. But there's actually some circumstantial things that you can change to prevent it and keep it from happening. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I have had so many people when they found out I was in dementia prevention about, or really it's cognitive health is the way I want to say it. Because when you look at dementia, Alzheimer's, that's where you've already gotten to a point of almost no return.
Okay.
So cognitive decline is where we want to talk about it. And I've had so many people reach out and they're like, I'm scared to death. My grandmother had it. My mom
Mhm.
had it. I know I'm going to get it. And that's a huge falsehood. So there are genetic components. There's an ApoE4 component. So ApoE is a gene, obviously. So just to kind of break it down, you get two alleles from your parents, one from your mom, one from your dad, to make this ApoE4 gene, or excuse me, ApoE gene. So you can have a one, two, three, or four allele, so you can get a three from your mom, a four from your dad, a two from your mom, a one from your, there's all kinds of combinations. If you have a double four allele, which is Chris Hemsworth is famous for, he discovered he was a homozygous ApoE4.
Was that in that show he did on Disney that they put out and they
Mhm.
tested his
I did not
genes?
watch that show, but yes, that's I think
Okay.
that's where
Yeah,
it kind
yeah,
of
I
came to
saw that.
light. So he's in this place where he's like, I'm super fit. Now I'm scared to death that I'm going to get dementia because I have homozygous means you have two ApoE4 alleles. Yes, you are much more prone to start having cognitive decline with that. That is kind of a genetic component. So for Chris Hemsworth, lucky for him, he's got a lot of skeletal muscle. He's been hopefully taking care of himself metabolically, right?
Right.
But if you have a three or four, you're a little more predisposed to having issues. If you don't have a three or a four, for you to get dementia and Alzheimer's, for most people, you just have to live really crappy. That's the best way
Okay.
I can put it. You did
Okay.
not take care of yourself for the 40 decades before.
Wow.
So this is one of the things that I looked at, and I'm like, okay. And you were talking about type 3 diabetes. They're finding that a lot of the cognitive decline that we're seeing is a result of people not having a good insulin sensitivities. You know, they're not taking care of their sugars. They're constantly eating high processed foods, very high sugar foods, not a lot of protein, things like that. So yes, there is a sugar metabolism disruption there going on for a lot of patients. The other things, so one of the things that my product was doing was it would take a patient's medication list that they were currently on. It would take their family history, their medical history, and it would take their lifestyle, and it would combine it all into an AI algorithm, and it would give like a complete treatment plan for this patient to prevent.
Right.
So, but what was really eye opening when I first started selling it is the amount of debates I would have with physicians about how important nutrition was. And part of it is number one, physicians, for the most part, don't understand nutrition.
Which is
They just
crazy.
they don't have education in it. And what's really crazy, and they're starting to realize this, and they're starting to take action. And the physicians that really, really are like, no, I'm in this to help people. They're going out and getting an education in nutrition. They are doing the work, which
Yeah.
is amazing to see. But I have had debates with internists where I had one going, hold on. So you're trying to tell me if I get a patient to clean up their nutrition, that they're going to stop having cognitive decline? Number one, yes, there is a one-to-one ratio of their what they're eating is affecting their brain.
Hmm.
But number two, if they're so far gone, no, that might not help. So that's who she was thinking of. She was like, no, if they have Alzheimer's dementia, that's not going to reverse it. No, but you can prevent things by the things that you're putting into your body.
Right.
Um, so that same physician goes, well, if it's a sugar issue, I have all of these different medications that I can put on them. I control my patients through medication. And number one, her office manager was walking by at the time we were having this discussion. They were like, I'm sorry, who is you do not like totally called her out. You don't control their blood pressure. We see the outcomes and they're not good. And so she was lying about that. Number one, what she
Yeah.
was saying is, I have medications that I can keep layering to get these patients. But
Insane.
if you're not fixing the root problem and you're not fixing the way that their relationship with food, they're constantly going to get to a place where the medication works and then it
Hmm.
doesn't after a while, right? It sets a new bar and you're going to have to keep layering on medications. And this is what I said to her is, okay, so let's say you do have a patient that you're constantly able to get their blood sugars regulated with those medications. What about all the side effects that all those medications are
Yeah.
doing,
Hmm.
right? Wouldn't that patient, if they knew that a simple change in their diet could maybe take some of those side effects off, not only that, but you're dealing with all these metabolic conditions that are helped with nutrition and adding muscle through fitness, all of these things. So it's not just it's so narrow scoped of I got to fix their blood glucose level every day. It's let's figure out why the blood glucose is messed up, and
Hmm.
then all these other things cascade. I mean, Kyle, you're a very fit person. You probably eat well, you're doing your fitness, you're probably sleeping well, you're probably really reducing your amount of stress daily and things like that.
Yep.
And because you're doing those simple things every day, you're not going to have all of these compounding things, all of these inflammatory issues, and all of that. And those are the things that start to show up as cognitive decline. So, cognitive decline is a symptom of the metabolic condition, which the metabolic condition is a symptom of poor fueling and poor movement.
Yeah. So if I hear you correctly, you're saying it starts now when you're younger, preventing these diseases. And I want to be clear. Like, you're not saying it's 100% guaranteed you'll prevent it, especially if you have the what was it? What'd you say? The 4-4.
ApoE44. Hmm.
Yeah. So if you have that, it's not 100% guaranteed, but it is strongly correlated that the way
Very.
you treat yourself now in your younger years sustainably
Hmm.
has a drastic impact on whether you're going to see these things in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, okay, so what does, this is the question that came to my mind. I'm curious if anyone else out there was thinking that. What does cognitive decline look like? Because sometimes I can't remember a word and I'm like, what's going on in my brain here? Like, what's happening? Right. And so, like,
Yep.
is that what you're talking about? Or is it just like, is it something more serious, like rather than just word recall?
It's different for everybody and it happens at different ages. Some people, they start seeing it at 40. Some people don't see it until they're 80, 90, which is kind of normal, right? That's,
Right.
you want to stay, if you're having cognitive decline when you're 80, 90, 100, okay, we're
Right.
okay. But typically some of the tests that they do are word recalls. So what they'll do is they'll give you 5 words at the beginning, ask you to repeat it back, and then they'll
Oh,
have a
no.
conversation with you and go, okay, those 5 words that we talked about earlier, what are they?
Oh,
Um,
geez.
or
Okay.
or they'll ask you, what is today's date? A lot of people that are having serious cognitive decline, they walk around in a state of confusion. And so you hear about people getting aggressive or anxious or depressed. And a lot of that is, imagine walking around in a little bit of confusion all day long.
Yeah.
And that's those are the more serious cases. Those are the people actually with Alzheimer's dementia, but you're really just kind of confused and you start getting angry because nobody understands where you're coming from and you're thinking you're speaking clearly, but obviously you're not, and it's very confusing. So but as you are looking for signs of cognition decline, where did I put my keys? Which I'm a terrible example of that because I never put my keys in the same place. And my husband, who's type A, is like, if you just would hang them up in the same place, that would have. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
But if you're finding that you used to find your keys all the time and then all of a sudden you're not, that's a good indication. These little signs. Or if you forget how to tie your shoes one day, like, start paying attention to these little things. But yes, to answer your question, if you are taking care of yourself, your 20s, 30s, 40s, your 50s, 60s, and 70s are probably going to look pretty good.
Yeah.
If you live pretty crappy in your 30s and 40s, those are the years, honestly, that are going to start to show up later. It is not too late, though, to reverse some of that. It is not at all. And you're actually, when you're in your 40s, I'm 42, and I feel like I'm at this place of like, I have complete ownership of what I'm doing.
Mm.
I'm super excited. I have reduced my metabolic age in the last 5 years, big time. So I am metabolically, I'm showing in my 20s, like early 20s.
That's incredible.
With my VO2 max, with my skeletal muscle composition, and with all my labs, they come back in my early 20s. 5 years ago, that was not the case. I was not somebody who lived as clean, I hate using that word, but as clean as I do now. So for those listening, you were talking about keeping things a little bit simple earlier. For those that are listening, what I do and what I show on my Instagram is to help motivate you and inspire you to do little things a little
Mm.
bit cleaner. But 5 years ago, I was not doing the things I'm doing every day now.
Yeah.
5 years ago, it would have seemed very, very tough to do what I do today. So it was little by little, but it
Okay.
adds up big when you're consistent on it.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that? So 5 years ago, because the story I have in my head is that like you were eating junk food every day 5 years ago, but that probably wasn't the case. But
Yeah,
what
that
like?
was the case.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. Well,
Yeah.
so 5 years ago, you just were kind of eating whatever. You weren't
Mhm.
exercising as often. Like, was that the case?
Yeah, and I won't say 5 years ago. It was about 7 years ago. It's always in my mind. It's always 5 years ago, but it was about 7 years ago. I had my second baby, and I was always in this place. So a lot of my followers kind of know my story, but yeah, I was a college athlete in my 20s. Just kind of ate. And by the way, I have a college nutrition degree. That's the funny part, is I understood macros, I understood calories and all that stuff. Did not know how to apply that to make a difference in myself though, which
Mm.
is interesting. Now I do. So 20s and 30s, I did this like really restrictive diet thing, and then I would not be able to hold on to that restriction and I would binge myself out of it.
Yeah.
So I would see these results and I'd be like, wow, I'm like, I look great. And I wasn't nearly as fit as I am now at my best back then. So now I just walk around super lean. But back then, I would achieve like a 5 or 10 pound weight reduction and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then binge myself back in like 13 pound gain. It was ridiculous. And I was doing things like the zone diet, which are great, but all I would eat is grilled chicken every like dry grilled chicken,
Yeah.
steamed broccoli, and brown rice every dinner. And you can't sustain on that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Very boring.
Yeah, boring. And I love food. I really love food. So but 7 years ago, I had my second baby, and I just went, you know what? I'm done with this like dieting thing. I'm done going to the gym for an hour and a half. I've got two kids now that I just can't do that stuff. And by the way, I was going to the gym regularly throughout all that time. I love the gym. Like that was mine and my husband's bonding place. We would have date nights before kids at the gym. That's what we love to do.
That's
And
cool.
then, but I was always fluffy. I was fluffy fit and was strong as a mule, but just fluffier than I thought I should be.
Right.
Which looking back at it, I was like, no, I was actually probably in a perfect spot. I just put a lot of pressure and expectations on myself.
Mm.
But so had my
That's in
baby.
that's interesting, and I wanna come back to that too, but keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I had my baby and I just need to simplify things. This is BS that I'm trying to put this much pressure on me while I'm trying to raise two babies. I'm trying to nurse this one. I'm trying to raise that one. And so I limited it to about 3 to 4 days at the gym for 45 minutes a day because I'd have to organize with my husband. Let me leave the kids with you so I can go.
Mhm.
Working full time, obviously. And then the other part of it was I went, let me just work on my portion control. Something in the back of my head went, maybe I'm just eating too much. Like maybe second helpings isn't normal. you know, maybe just not going for the second plate would be helpful.
Yeah.
So that's what I started with, and that unlocked so much, Kyle. Like I started seeing weight just fall off of me simply because I reduced my intake by maybe 500 calories a day. And when you were talking about eating fast food and all that stuff, we have Hardee's here. I don't know
Oh, yeah,
where,
I know
okay. Yeah,
Hardee's.
Carl's
Hardee's is
Jr. Hardee's.
great.
Okay. So I am a big fan of their bacon cheeseburger. And probably twice a week, I was going through that drive through while I was in working hours, still eating that. But instead of getting the fries now, I would just get the sandwich. So that
Mhm.
was my cutback on that. I used to get this burger and the fries and the drink. And I just went, let me get water and a burger. So that's how I cut that back. Used to go to McDonald's every day for one of their McGriddle things. I changed that to a egg McMuffin. So I was still doing the high processed foods, the fast foods, but I just tipped it down on the calories just a little bit. And
Yeah.
that unlocked a lot, right? So I started losing body fat. I started losing weight. And then still doing the fitness thing, I got a little more motivated to go, okay, well, what happens if I just like start cooking more dinners at home? So I started doing that. I wasn't cooking diet food, I was just cooking food, but
Yeah.
eating an appropriate portion for myself. So that started working. I started incorporating more veggies and fruits and getting more fiber. And then I started incorporating more protein and things like that. And it's like little by little by little now if you look at what I eat every single day, you're like, well, that's a diet. For most people, yeah, but it's actually just my norm. And I am perfectly fine, zero restriction. I have dessert almost every single night.
That's
And
awesome.
if I want a glass of wine or a drink out with my husband, I'll have it. But I've also cut that back. I used to drink wine every single night, cut that back. And so now I have maybe a glass of wine every once a week, twice a week, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So little by little.
No, that's awesome. How long did that whole process take? What did it take 7 years? I mean,
No, it took about probably 4 or 5. So I've been this way for about the last 2 years.
okay.
And the last thing that I really incorporated was taking my protein consumption to about 40% of my calories, and I reduced my alcohol. Those were the last two things that I really focused on. Now I'm focusing on things like I'm going to make my bed every day. I'm going to floss my teeth every day. I'm going to take my makeup every night off. Like these little things now have opened up to let me see what else I can do to develop myself that I know are going to be positive either mentally or physically or metabolically. So yeah, that it was about a 4 to 5 year process.
No, that's awesome. And I think it's encouraging for people to hear. It's even encouraging for me to hear because I think people have an all or nothing mentality. You know,
Yeah.
they'll list out 30 things that they need to do that are completely different than what they're doing now, and they
Yeah.
get through 30 things for like 2 days, and they're like, "This is exhausting."
It's
rather than,
exhausting.
yeah, rather than realizing, okay, it's taken someone like yourself who's a fitness influencer, you're very healthy, very educated, 4 or 5 years to establish these healthy routines, and you're still adding things as you go along.
Hmm.
It can be simultaneously encouraging and discouraging because people want results fast,
Yeah.
but it's like, okay, if you can just swallow the pill that it's going to take you some time, you can get there. You just got one thing after another, like one step after another,
Yeah.
one routine after another. So I think it's encouraging for people to hear that.
It's a slow. If you can think of it as a stair step, and I do metabolic consults, nutrition consults, if you will, where we come up with a nutrition strategy. But I also give a lot of education. And when I first started doing those consults, I was just so excited to educate everybody that I would give them so much information. And then what I realized is it was too much information,
Yeah.
and they thought I was saying you need to do all these things. What I was giving them was a blueprint to metabolic health. So now what I do is I go, here's the priority of things that you need to do. Start here. When you feel good with that, then add this,
Mm,
then add this. But yeah, I love the metaphor of the ice cube. You've probably heard this before, but
think so.
I always tell my athletes, I said, think of yourself as an ice cube that's in a freezer. And every day you can turn the thermostat up, but you can only turn it up by 1 degree. And it's kind of symbolic of every workout you do, you can only do so much,
Yeah.
right? So every day you go in and you turn the thermostat up 1 degree and it starts at zero. So for 30 days or so, you're going in there. And every day sometimes it's hard to go in there and turn that thermostat on. But you get to day 30 and you're like, this freaking ice cube is still solid. Like I don't see any change in the ice
Yep.
cube. Like, what the F? It's not changing, it's not melting, it's not doing anything. 2 days later, it's at 32 degrees and that thing starts sweating. And
Yeah.
that's how we are. We put in all this work. And what you don't realize is if you're doing effective work, you're changing your mitochondrial health. You are changing yourself at a cellular level. Your hormones are starting to kind of cascade better. Your sleep is a little bit better. You're reducing stress. You're able to deal with stress better. And all of those things add up. And then one day you just start seeing those
Yeah.
results.
Yeah.
And it's a habit now that you've created, and I think that's the biggest thing. You were talking about how exhausting it is. I think if you can become good at creating new habits,
Hmm.
you can do anything. So if anybody watching this is like, what is the first step I need to do? What I would say is take something that's unusual for you that you have a goal for and try to make that habitual somehow. Make that your personality. If you can take something as simple as um, I'm going to give the dog a bath every single week. Something so simple, but you can now make that your personality, and that dog is the healthiest, cleanest dog you've ever seen in your life. Then you've done something. You have shown that you can make change and establish a new pattern in your life. So now take those same principles and start to slowly apply them to whatever else you want.
Yeah. So, did you struggle at all with being consistent when you wanted to make these changes? Because that's the biggest thing I run into when I talk to potential clients who want to come on and work with me. They're like, "Man, I just the yo-yo effect. I'm good for a while, then I stop. I'm good, and then I stop." And they're always like, what's gonna help me be consistent? And accountability is a huge part of that for sure. But for you, you know, I don't think it's something to gloss over. I think there were probably moments where you did, and we go down and then come back up and then down and back up, or maybe you didn't. But I'm curious, like what helped you be really consistent with that and make the changes and not go back?
Um, Great question. So I'll take myself back to when I was in my 20s doing these big crash diets. It was against my personality to do things like that. So number one, whatever change you're putting in, it has to fit into your life with a little bit of a stretch.
Mm.
So what I mean by that is if you're somebody who, you start training with me on my Salt app and you go, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do everything because I lay it out Monday through Sunday, with Sunday being a stretch rest day. Monday through Sunday, I have something every single day. So I have new athletes that go, I'm gonna train with you every single day. That's amazing. Love that for you. What are you doing right now? Oh, well, I haven't worked out in 10 years, but I used to be super fit, right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
I know you were super fit and you still have the potential to be that. But if you're going from 0 to 7 days a week, you're gonna feel like a failure, you're gonna feel exhausted, you're gonna feel restriction, you're gonna feel resentment because you can't keep up.
Yep.
So we want to eliminate the possibility for resentment and reward you with challenge, overcoming things, and feeling successful.
Mm.
So if you can do those things, you want it to be challenging, but slightly challenging. You want to have that feeling of success so it keeps calling you back because motivations they're gonna wax and wane.
Yep.
So what I do is I go, how about this? How about you just come on in any of those 7 sessions? I want you just to do 3 of them. And by 3 of them, I want you to turn it on and I want you to just do the warm up with me. If you can just show up for 3 days out of those 7, just show up, like literally press play and watch me talk for 5 minutes. That counts towards success right now. As you're doing this, you're going to create consistency. So if you can create a pattern even though you don't want to, just showing up is what we do. So one of the my favorite tools is the 2 in a row rule. Most coaches know the 2 in a row rule and it's amazing. This is how I quit drinking every night. Was I went um right now I'm drinking every single night. So if I can create a rule where I cannot have a drink 2 days in a row, then I'll be good. So what I found with that when I started was it was super easy the first week. Like I was going 3, 4 days. I was like, I'm good. This is cool. And then about 2 weeks in, I started talking to myself. I was like, I mean, I'm kind of stressed. Like I could use a drink, but I had just had a date night with my husband the night before. So I started trying to talk myself out of that rule and I realized when you're trying to talk yourself out of a rule you set, that's when you need the rule the most.
Mm.
That's when you can't really trust your instincts and you're trying to slide right back into the person that you were.
Yeah.
So had I not had that rule, I would have done exactly what I had done for 2 years, where I would try to pull back on my drinking and then just fall right back into it because it's a stress reliever for my busy day.
Mm.
And I would make those excuses. But if you could set a rule like a 2 in a row rule. So for example, for the person that is trying to work out 3 days out of 7, right? They cannot go 2 weeks in a row with less than 3 days of training. So they get their 3 days done. The next week, they're like, oh, I only got one done. Well, the next week, you have to friggin' do 3 days. No excuses. What does that do though, Kyle? It eliminates the ability to make excuses and
Mhm.
it makes you a problem solver. So if you're like, well, my kid has practice 5 days a week, you better take a dumbbell to practice then and you better get to working on the sidelines. So that's how I look at it is you become somebody who has less excuses and you have an ability to solve problems around that issue. And those things are like they're life skills. So when
Yeah.
you talk about people that like you and I, well, they seem like they have all their crap together. There's a reason for that. We have practiced discipline so much that we don't have to practice it anymore. We are just a disciplined person. So if you and I go, we want to adopt this new habit, it's pretty easy to do
Yeah.
because we know the steps to do it because we've practiced discipline so much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point because as soon as I think about adding a new thing into my life, my brain immediately goes into systems and processes. Like
Yes.
how's
Yep.
this going to work? Where's it going to fit in? How do I do it? How do I stack it with this thing? And it becomes very very easy. Like
Yep.
and I have all these tools like sometimes I'll set alarms on my phones like that can be like a helpful reminder like things like that.
Hmm.
But my brain immediately goes there
Yep.
because I've been doing this for years, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's really encouraging. The 2 in a row rule, I've never heard that, but
Oh,
but
that's great. Yeah.
I really like that, and I think
It's
that's
awesome.
and and I want to hit on this too when you said bring a dumbbell to practice. Some people will hear that and they'll be like, I'm not bringing a dumbbell to practice, but it's like, hey, if you really want change, like you might have to be that person that brings a
Mhm.
dumbbell to practice and you
I
look like a
love
crazy
being that
person.
person. I love being that like, I am that mom that's like, "Oh," and I know, like, I know I'm getting the, "Here's Jenny with her dumbbell again."
Yep.
I give 0 Fs, Kyle, and what's funny, though, is, yeah, you'll have some people like that because they're they've got a mirror in front of them going,
Yeah.
I could be doing that," right? But me, I have 0 judgment for anybody because I'm thinking, that person right there, they might have lost 100 pounds in the last year going to the gym at 5 a.m. every day. They don't need to bring a dumbbell to the gym, you know? That person over there might be dealing with some serious family loss and they're
Mhm.
grieving. They don't need to bring a dumbbell to a workout or to a practice. But I personally need this. What I found though is that for every naysayer, you've got 5 people that are inspired by you.
Yeah.
So I lean on, I mean, so I had this whole thing about some troll online, and I giggle at it. I stay so unbothered by it. But I also know that for every crazy troll, there's 100 people that I'm actually getting to them to get their butt up off the couch and go to the gym or just
Yeah.
move a little bit. So if you can do those things and think, well, I don't want to be that mom that's walking around the field by myself while everybody else is sitting in their chairs, you're gonna inspire somebody, I swear
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, people see that and they genuinely think to themselves, "Man, I could be doing that too." Like that's really cool. Like I said,
Yeah.
I say this to people who are really struggling with their weight because they go in the gym and they worry about, people looking at them and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I promise you, people are looking at you and they're encouraged.
Yeah.
They're like, heck
Yeah.
yeah. Like that's so
So,
cool to see this person in the gym.
and it's not like you might have somebody who, yeah, maybe they're relatively fit, and what I mean by that is they look a certain aesthetic or whatever, but they've never been in a gym and they are lost and they're super insecure and they're reading every like
Yeah.
thing on the machine and they feel really self-conscious because they're like, I don't know how to use this. I've got to read everything. If I happen to notice some, because you can kind of like if you've been at the gym, you can kind of notice new people.
Hmm.
I get so tickled. Like I'm like, yes, yes. So yeah, it's the people that are super fit and super acclimated to a gym setting. I think we're the happiest to see other people come in and thrive and ask us questions and things like that. But yeah, I think there's a stigma of should feeling like you should know, otherwise you don't belong, and that's
Yeah.
not the case at all. And you had asked earlier about my expectations of myself when I was younger and being like the fluffy fit and how I thought I should have looked a certain way and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um I did and I'm talking about this for people that do the whole, well, I need to get in shape before I do a program or something, which
Yeah.
is a
Oh
funny
man.
thing, but it happens a lot, right?
Oh yeah.
Um
So often.
it's funny. I do a women's retreat every year. I've got one coming up in the end of April in Fort Lauderdale, and I've had a couple of women. They're like, "I'm not in shape enough to come to that," and I'm like, "Oh no, this is exactly for you. Like this is one of those
Hmm.
things that you learn. You learn those things." But when I was younger, I used to feel like I go to the gym and spend 2 hours at the gym every night and I eat grilled chicken and broccoli and steamed rice and all this stuff or brown rice. And why do I not look like the cover of hers Muscle and Fitness? Why do I not look like that? And number one, I look back and I'm like, golly, you did look strong. You did look so capable, but your thighs were a little bit bigger than your friends, right? And so I would constantly compare myself to my skinny friends who were, we're all in our 20s. I just didn't have that frame. I had a very athletic frame and I was way stronger than any of my friends. And I wish I'd appreciated that more.
Mm.
I could out sprint anybody, like things like that. That I'm like, God, I wish I had thought about what I am capable of and not just my aesthetic at that time. And I think had I settled into that a little bit more, I probably would have had more grace and things instead of going to all the bodybuilding forums and finding out what the bro science was of everything. I could have settled a little bit more. But yeah, I do look back and I'm like, yeah, I was 18 pounds heavier back then, but I was still strong. I was still very capable. And I wish I'd given myself more grace back then.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is you never know. Like someone on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, or scrolling through your explore page on social media, you never know who's on gear and who's not, female or male. And
Yeah.
that's another piece.
And
Like,
now Ozempic is another thing that's thrown in there that
and now
you just don't
Ozempic,
know.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you just don't know. And so because you don't know, you don't do yourself any justice comparing
Yeah.
yourself with
That's a good
people.
point.
You
Yeah.
just really don't. Like, yeah, see them maybe if they're giving some good advice on how to do a bench press better or squat better, sure. If it works
Hmm.
for you and you can take the advice, take it. But try your best not to compare your aesthetics to this person because there's so much to it. And even if they're not on drugs, it could be training age. They've been training since they're 10 and now they're 30. It's 20 years of time in the gym. Like
Hmm.
that's me. I started when I was like 12 or 13. I'm now 32.
Hmm.
I've literally never taken more than 2 weeks off ever.
Yeah.
And
Same.
for years I was doing 2 to 3 workouts a day when I was competing in CrossFit. It's like you comparing your physique to me is completely like you're not going to serve yourself. You're just not.
Well, and that I appreciate you saying that because, for example, I had somebody ask, I was doing I do these like fun little cardio fitness things just honestly because people really like them. And like your average everyday mom who doesn't go to the gym, she just wants something fun to do at home. So I was doing like the step thing. I'm a fitness freak. Like I can do 70 push-ups in a row. I can bench press 165 pounds.
Let's go.
I'm a freak. But so I was doing this thing to the beat of the music, and this girl goes, "Okay, you sped this up. How fast are you actually going?" And I went, I didn't speed it up, but I'm also a freak of fitness. You don't have to go that fast.
Yeah.
Like go find a beat or music or just do it to your own beat and go at a place that challenges you. But
Mhm.
for example, when I'm training on my app, again, I'm a fitness freak. So I constantly tell people, I'm like, don't try to keep up with me. And also don't let me hold you back. You might be way fitter than me. So
Sure.
I'm giving you guidance. I want you to take that and I want you to find challenge for yourself. But yes, I've been training since I was 17 years old. I've been doing these things.
Yeah.
And that muscle memory and that ability to grow muscle has been starting since then. So if you're somebody who's just getting off the couch and you're expecting these things to just happen, number one, get a trainer or get a really focused program or a gym to really help you, because if you're
Mhm.
doing it on your own you are going to have these limitations just in not knowing and understanding.
Yeah.
But yeah, so stop comparing yourself to people that have been again, college athlete. I've been doing this stuff my whole life. I'm 42 now and I'm not slowing down. But
Yeah.
if you're just starting when you're 30 or 40, yeah, don't expect that quick uptake. It can be quick, it can be, but don't expect it. Just expect progress day
Yeah.
after day. Get
That's it.
1% better every single day.
Yeah. 1000%.
Mhm.
Okay. Metabolic health. And you help people achieve metabolic health. Let's walk through that. We've kind of been hitting on that as we've been going around, but I'd love to make a focus section on this. So what is your process on helping someone achieve metabolic health? How do you analyze it? Like what what do you do to help someone do that? And how important is that to you to consider in training someone?
Um, to me, I used to go and do like I do like the OTFs, so the F45s and all these things, and I would kind of wear myself out, but I loved it because I was so athletic and I felt so just, powerful when I would do that stuff. Um, but it was not answering a metabolic benefit for me. So what I've realized, and a lot of it was intuitive. I would kind of use myself as like a N of one study, right?
Hmm.
Which I think everybody should do. Quite
Yeah.
frankly, I think you should use yourself as an N of one study, meaning one person in this in the study, and just use yourself to kind of gauge things up and down. But here's what I look at as just a generalized for the general population of things that you should focus on is if you are training, if your first focus is training, because some people their first focus is training, some people their first focus is nutrition. For some people, they try to do it all at once, which is great. Which is great, but I think if you have a heavy focus on one thing, it's hard to get a heavy focus on both things without crashing and burning.
Hmm.
So if you're focusing on training, I think, and this goes especially for women as you're entering in perimenopause and menopause, is growing skeletal muscle. So how do we do that? We do that with progressive overload, hypertrophy training. You can do that with burnout sets of lighter weights too. But getting a very, and I'm a cross trainer, so I do it all. Like there
Yeah.
is nothing off the table for me because again, I'm a woman of a certain age, so I focus on that demographic mostly. women have got to be doing plyometrics. They've got to be doing jumping. They've got to feel impact in their knees. They've got to be doing mobility training. And this goes for men too, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
I love that you're saying this right now. This is amazing.
Yeah, and it's all based in science. It really is. But skeletal muscle building, again, through heavy weight training. Um, when I say hit training, I think that gets taken out of context. People are like, "Oh, you mean just like jumping around and getting your cardio up?" No, I mean going to a rate of perceived exertion of a 9 or 10, and then
Hmm.
recovering enough so that you can annihilate the next set.
Yeah.
It might be a 15-second set, might be right. It might be for me, it's like a 45 seconds. It's hard for me because my VO2 max is at 67, 68. So for me to get to an RPE of 9, it takes a lot. It
Yeah.
takes a full
You're
out
going.
sprint for 30 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but for some people just starting out, they're going to hit it at 15 seconds just doing mountain climbers. That's fine. Your rate of perceived exertion is perceived exertion. It is what you perceive. So if you are just flat out exhausted, have time to recover, but what that's doing is it's going to benefit your VO2 max. It's going to make you more efficient cardiovascularly. It's also going to demand that your body kind of wake up some of these mitochondria, turn over some of these cells,
Yeah.
get your body younger, quite frankly, getting those cells to turn over, getting that mitochondria to turn on. So I always talk about with my clients, I'm like, the wall behind you is full of light switches. So right now you have, let's say 75% of them switched off. What we're trying to do every day is just flip on one, maybe 10, maybe five, and you'll have a day or a vacation where a couple of them flip back off. But because
Yeah.
you consistently are flipping them bitches on, that light is going to light up. And that's what we want. So
I love that
again,
analogy. That's really good.
yeah, when you think about that, you're like, okay, I've got 1,000 light switches, and if I flip off two, it's fine. My machine is still working. If I go and have 3 pieces of pizza, guess what? Everything is still turned on. I'm good.
Hmm.
But if you're one of those people that you're talking about looking at dementia at age 60, you probably have only 25% of those light switches on, and that's sad. And we need to start working on
Yeah.
that. So back to your original question. When I train my clients, it is building muscle, it is working on that VO2 max, it is working on plyometrics and impact. Um, Sprint intervals we are doing, and of course I'm in a room, so I'm telling people you go sprint while I jump rope or do burpees or something. And then mobility is a huge thing for me
Yeah.
because I have so many people that are like, again, with my little fitness Instagram challenges, the biggest comment I have is, "Oh, my knees would never," or, "I can hear my knees with you doing it," that kinda thing. "My knees
Yeah.
hurt just watching you," and
Yeah.
it's because I'm getting that full range of motion squat kinda thing, and I that breaks my heart, honestly, Kyle. That is the one thing that I'm like, "Oh, but your knees don't have to hurt." Like,
Yeah.
I wanna be like, "Come train with me. I got you. I got you."
Yeah.
But, if you're not doing mobility training, if you're not doing full range of motion movement, if you're not doing that impact jumping, yeah, your joints are gonna age, and you are gonna be set in the Lucy and Desi era where you hit 40 and you're old,
Yeah.
and quite frankly, that's bullshit. I'm 42. I'm the youngest I've ever been in a metabolic way.
Yeah. I mean, you're crushing it. I think so. Dr. Mike Isertel.
I don't. Mm-mm.
He's the RP guy. So he's either the co-founder or the founder of RP, but he puts out a lot of really great content on YouTube. He's kind of a wild banshee. Like he says a bunch of off the cuff stuff when he's like, because he'll review people's workouts.
Okay.
But he's fun to watch, and he gives
Yeah.
a ton of education. And one of the things he said is, if you're watching somebody do something, and you think, oh my gosh, that's gotta hurt. There's no way. It's like it's not a them problem. It's a you problem,
Yeah.
and it means you're lacking the resilience to do something
Mhm.
and you don't have to, right? And like to your
Mhm.
point, like someone sees you squatting full depth, like, oh my gosh, my knees, I could never. No, 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 no. You need to start progressing into that because your joints can and should be healthy enough to do that. And
That's right.
you can reverse it. You got to slowly do it and the whole thing, but
Yep.
if you see that and that should be like a light bulb in your head. Like that should be one of the white light switches that turns on. It's like if you see that and you feel pain in your body, okay, I need to attack this area because it shouldn't
Yeah.
be like that. I should be able to do something like that.
For most people outside of like autoimmune disorders and things like that, and rheumatoid issues, I think bad joints are a choice. And
Mm,
and I mean that by some people are like, but I drive a truck, I drive a long haul truck. I'm sitting for 8 hours a day. Okay. do you have to sit it for 8 hours a day? Like, could you maybe pull into a truck stop and take a 5 minute walk around your truck?
Yeah.
Things like that. Like
Do some cat
sedentary life to me is it's a disease state. It is literally a choice that you're making. Yes, it is kind of an obligation for you to be at your desk. But I had one client who's like, Jenny, I sit at my desk for 8 hours. She's super fit, like she's very athletic. She's one of my athletes, and she eats well. They eat almost all whole foods, but she's been talking about certain things. And I'm like, go get you a yoga ball to sit on for half the day. Like
Yeah.
that right there is going to make you use your core. I said, every 30 minutes, set a timer on your phone that you literally have to stand up, walk to the kitchen, and come back. I said, just break it up. Go for a
Mhm.
walk around your building at lunchtime, but break up that sedentary life and don't let that be your excuse. Like you have choices and things you can do. I've got an athlete right now. She's actually my high school cheerleading coach,
Oh, cool.
and she's been training with me for 5 years, which is so cool. But she, even back then when she was 24, she had knee and joint issues because she has an autoimmune disorder. Since I have known her, she's had 2 knees replaced. She has an ankle fused. She has some spinal issues. Um, she does every single one of my, and my sessions do not play around. We don't dick around. We go hard in the paint. She is doing every single session. She modifies everything she needs to, but she goes hard on certain things, and she'll send me modifications that she does. And I'm like, yes,
That's
her
awesome.
progress and her skeletal muscle that she's built is insane. So I'm like, just keep doing what you're doing. And all she does is she goes, I know what I can do. I'm limited in certain ways, but I focus on what can I do today.
That's so awesome. That's
Yeah.
that has to be the mindset you adopt of like, okay, well, what, and that can be. This gets me fired up because this can be at any aspect of life, right? Like any
Yeah.
aspect of life. Like, what can you do? Don't focus on what you can't do. Like, I'll use
Mhm.
myself as an example, but like this whole podcast thing. Like, I would love to have a studio and I could do it in person and have all the cameras and the lights, but you know what? I don't have that. But what I have is Riverside app and a webcam set up, and I can get guests.
Mhm.
And we can do the whole thing. It's like you just got to focus on what you can do and
Yep.
just hammer it.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe some limitations will go away over time and you can progress into other areas. You don't know, but like just do it. Because it is excuses, like you said. Like, oh, well, I have to sit at my desk all day. No, you don't. You can get up and walk
Yeah.
around. You can do
Yeah.
some air squats. You
You
can
need to
set
do
a
your work.
timer on your phone.
Yeah.
You can do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back, I kind of derailed you a little bit. You had asked about what are the metabolic things that people can focus on. So we talked about training, and the other part of it is nutrition. Like, what can we do today for nutrition? Because we had kind of chatted earlier before the podcast started about how confusing things get, and there's so
Mhm.
much nuance, and there's this and that, and we need to eat animal-based protein. We got to take our creatine every day, and so you get moms, my neighbors who are seeing this stuff and they're so confused. They don't have a
Yeah.
degree in nutrition, they don't have certifications in these things. So, what I tell them is I was like, let's focus on just big picture, okay? Number 1, our focus needs to be on building skeletal muscle. That's a huge thing, especially for women that are going into menopause, because it's not that we're trying to get big and buff, bulky and all that stuff. What we're trying to do is minimize the amount of atrophy that we're going to experience, because
Right.
men and women, especially women after menopause, we are going to be losing muscle mass year after year, and it's harder to synthesize protein as we get older. So
Wow.
we've got to combat all of that. So what we're doing is, and the reason, by the way, the reason why skeletal muscle is so important to me is when you look at people in a hospital, for example, when you have people dying, there are less people. So let me back this up and use good verbiage here. The amount of body fat that a person has is not as detrimental as the lack of muscle that a person has. And
Yep.
so when you look at, and I'll just use this to kind of paint a picture, but if you look at the frail older woman with almost no muscle mass,
Hmm.
she is in a more serious situation than the 400-pound obese man that also has a lot of muscle on his body at the same time. Those two, she's probably at a worse off disadvantage.
Yeah, and that's very paradoxical to people's thinking. It's
Mhm.
very paradoxical, but yeah, muscle mass is hugely important for preventing all sorts of things.
That's right. That's right. So when we're looking at those things, when we're trying to focus on muscle mass, Fat burn will come from all of this, by the way. It is a cascading effect. But when we're focusing on building muscle, you want to eat enough protein. So, what I advise my clients to do is if you're eating 25 to 40% of your food from protein, you're going to help yourself build muscle on. So, even if you're losing muscle, you're going to be replenishing that. Um, Science has shown that if you can eat between 30 and 40% of your calories from protein, it really doesn't matter what your fats and your sugars work out as. Your body composition should be about the same,
Wow.
depending on how much protein you're taking and the amount of calories you're taking, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're eating excess calories, you're going to store that as fat.
Yep.
So we want to get a good calorie budget. So if you're somebody who's like, I would like to lose weight, the best equation that I can go with that works for most people is your current body weight times 12. That should be a slight deficit for you. If you're trying to maintain your body weight, 14 to 15 times your body weight will probably keep you at a nice maintenance. But 12 times your current body weight, and that is 7 days a week. That is the part that people mess. They're like, I'm in a deficit. And this was me when I was younger. I'm in a deficit. I don't understand. I'm like, well, you're in a deficit 4 days a week. Let's talk about the other three, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're honest with yourself, you're like, okay, maybe I do splurge a little too hard on Saturdays. So 7 days a week, if you can maintain that deficit, you're probably going to lose weight. But then if you can increase your protein to about 25 to 40% of that, but to make it even easier for women, at least 100 grams of protein a day. There are so many women that aren't even getting like 70 to 80 grams a day.
Mhm. Drastically under
Um,
eating protein. Drastically.
Drastically under eating, and part of it is because they're thinking, well, that's like bro stuff. I don't need all that. I need just to lose calories. That's all I need. Yes, but here's the benefit of protein though. If your protein is high enough, food noise gets reduced, your energy goes up, your sleep gets better, your appetite is like not as, crazy. You're staying fuller longer, the meals are more satiable. So all of those things are like protein is one of those magic things that we don't think about in all of its glory. We just go, oh, okay, that's what the bros eat to get stronger.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
doing so much from a dieting perspective. It is a wonder drug. So I always talk about taking protein in a medicinal dose. So stop thinking of protein as like a macronutrient. Think of it as medicine. So I take my
Yeah. That's
medicine
great.
in
I love that.
it's 30-gram blocks. I have 3 meals a day, 30 grams or more for each meal. If you do that, you're already at 90. And some of those meals are going to have more. Or you might have a snack every once in a while of a meat stick or yogurt or something like that to up it even more to that 100 grams. But the optimal number is your ideal body weight. So if I want to, for example, if I wanted to weigh 120 pounds, which would never, but if I wanted to weigh 120 pounds, I would try to eat 120 grams of protein. So
Yeah.
that's a goal for you. And then again, fat and carbs, there's nothing wrong with those. You need it all. You need it all. But, getting it to where your calories are under in a deficit if your goal is to lose weight is that. The other thing that I always talk about is getting enough fiber and reducing your added sugar. If you're
Mm.
if you're focusing on adding fiber, so I eat 40 to 80 grams of fiber a day. Some people need to kind of slowly get to that. But if you're focusing on that, and Kyle, you probably eat a lot of fiber because you're eating a lot of whole sources of foods.
Hmm.
The people that tell me, Jenny, I can't find fiber. It's so hard for me to add fiber into my diet. I go, you're eating a lot of high processed foods. If
Yes.
you were to actually eat whole plants, whole grains, whole fruits, whole veggies, seeds, all that stuff, you would find fiber. It is everywhere.
Hmm.
So the people that start eating from whole foods are like, oh, you're right. Yeah,
It's
fiber's
not
in
as hard as I thought.
everything. It's not as hard as I thought. Same thing with protein. When you really start focusing on protein, it's everywhere. So that, and then reducing the amount of added sugar. So if you're just starting, I would say keep your added sugars under 50 grams a day. For somebody like me, I try to keep it under about 35 grams a day, but that's something that you ease into. I have a dessert every single night. I reserve my added sugar for that.
Nice.
So throughout the day, I'm eating whole fruits, whole vegetables. Those don't count for added sugars. Those are bonus sugars. Those are
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's when it comes with fiber packed with it, you're fine. But when you are eating cereals with sugars, when you're putting sugar in your coffees, when you're,
Oof.
gums with sugar, anything like that, those are added sugars.
Yeah.
Sodas, terrible. But yeah.
Yeah. I had a guy I was talking to, a potential client. He didn't end up wanting to do it, but I was like, okay, so what does your breakfast look like? He's like, it's pretty healthy, and he wanted to go right to lunch, and I was like, okay, well, but what are you eating for breakfast? He's like, well, I have cereal, and I was like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to work
Yeah.
on that. We're gonna have to work on that, and
Yeah, and cereal, so I had this conversation with my kids. My children could probably teach a college course one-on-one on nutrition because we're like, you get this. If we teach you little by little, you're gonna get this. So my kids are really well versed in nutrition.
I love it.
But I was one of those moms, again, stair step thing. One of the things I used to feed my kids before they'd go to school, Frosted Flakes and stuff, because I was like, well, I mean, I ate it, it didn't kill
Mhm.
me. That was my mentality back then. And my kids love it. They love it. They ask for it. So I'll give it to them. And I finally got to a point where I'm like, what am I doing? Like,
Mm.
why? And again, if you're a mom giving your kids Frosted Flakes, don't feel like you have to be Jenny Fisher and take that away from them. This is my story. But I looked at it and I went, I'm sending my kids to school on pure sugar. Like there's nothing else but sugar in that cereal. They're going to school, they're probably crashing, they're probably getting irritated, they're probably getting sleepy and all these things. And these kids are high level athletes. They're doing high level jujitsu tournaments all over the world. They're tackle football players. Like they need protein. So I stepped it up and I went, guys, here's what we're gonna do. I will still buy Frosted Flakes if you want them. However, they're not gonna be for breakfast anymore. We're gonna eat protein and some good carbs before you go to school. But if you want Frosted Flakes for dessert, because they're allowed to have a dessert every night if they eat their protein and fiber for dinner. I'm like, if you want that for dessert though, you can have that. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, screw that. I don't want that for dessert. I want a popsicle. And I'm like, okay. So we just don't buy it anymore. I gave them the option. I said, we can still have this in your life, but this is the role of the cereal now. Do you still want that indulgence? And they're like, no, we'd rather have like actual dessert. Cool. Okay.
That's
Because
awesome.
they understand. They understood what I was saying. They're like, yes, mom, you want us to feel fueled and you want our muscles growing, you want us to be able to repair. So they got it. They picked it up.
That's so awesome. I want to do this. Can you give someone what your day of eating looks like? Like a day, like not a maybe not a quote unquote cheat day, but just
Mhm.
like Monday through Friday, whatever it is. Like this is how I'm eating my food. Can you lay out for someone some sample ideas?
I can. And if you end up following me on social media, you'll see that I never do here's what I eat in a day. I do share my individual meals and my stories. I'm like, this is my breakfast, this is my whatever.
Hmm.
But here's why I don't regularly share that as a influencer is because me 5 years ago would have seen that and gone, I can't do that. Like, there's no way I can keep up with that. That's a diet. But I'll kind of break it down for you and make it. I'll give you the building blocks in my head of how I build this too. So
Perfect. Yeah.
when I train, typically I train live on my app in the mornings at 6:30. Before my training, I have a little bit of sugar, simple glucose to fuel my workout. Why do
Beautiful.
I do that? Because my workouts aren't about burning calories. They're not about burning fat. They are about going as hard as I friggin' can, and I don't want to hit a wall. So having that available blood glucose to pull from during that session will make it better for me. So I
Yeah.
have like 10 grams of sugar before in the form of agave or whatever. And then after my workout, I'll have some coffee. And I sometimes will put a little bit of protein in my coffee, but my breakfast has 30 to 45 grams of protein in it. So, what that looks like is eggs with cottage cheese, maybe some of the Costco pre-cooked chicken or steak. Maybe I have leftover steak that I heat up in the pan. So steak and eggs, 30 to 45 grams, again, getting that medicinal dose of protein. And then I'll have some kind of whole fruit on the side. So if it's maybe I'll have cottage cheese with fruit, Greek yogurt with fruit, a whole plum, a whole apple, big on kiwis with the fur on it. I like that. But if you can eat
Kiwis are incredible. Oh my
kiwis
gosh.
are the
They're
best.
so good.
And eat the golden ones with the skin on it. Have you tried
No.
it with the skin?
No.
Bro, dude, game changer. It's
Really?
so good. It's like crunchy. Oh, it's so good. The
Okay.
not the really furry ones, like the minimally, you
Just
know,
minimal fur.
minimal fur. Yeah. Like she had a bikini wax kind of thing. So those are amazing. And then yeah, bananas, anything like that. People are like, "Oh, bananas are so high in sugar." Yeah, but there's fiber in there. Like get your fiber. Sometimes I'll add chia seeds to whatever I'm doing if I need a little bit of fiber, a little bit of good fats. Okay, so that's my breakfast. Typically, it's about 400 to 600 calories in that. So
Nice.
I am high protein, high fiber is my focus there. No added sugars. I don't drizzle nothing with honey. I used to. back in the day, I'd be like, "Oh, honey's healthy."
Yeah.
Honey is added sugar, that's all it is. So if you want it before your workout, great. So then going on to lunch about 3 to 4 hours later, because I've had so much protein, I'm full until then. My lunch is maybe a high fiber wrap, like one of those carb neutral wraps or whatever.
Yep.
I'll put some grilled chicken or grilled steak in there, maybe even some deli meat. I'm not weird about deli meat because I don't eat it that often. I'll put some lettuce, tomatoes in there. And then I do homemade ranch, and I'll just drizzle a little bit of homemade ranch in there.
Oof.
Yeah,
You're
just a
speaking my
little bit,
language
right?
right now. Sounds
Dude,
great.
I am big on sauces and spices
Yeah.
and I'm huge on those. So I do cooking classes on my Instagram live because I want people to see. I'm like, I cook 5 days a week for my family, restaurant quality foods, and it takes me 30 minutes, and it's so easy and so healthy.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so I'll have that for lunch. Trying to think of some sides that I might have for lunch. I'm not big on sides. If it's like if that wrap is big enough, it's gonna fill me up kind of thing. But sometimes I'll have like a Fairlife protein drink with it on the side. Again, trying to at least hit that 30 grams of protein is
Yep.
a big goal for me. I might have some leftover veggies. If I have roasted veggies, I'll heat those back up. I'm not a meal prepper. I like fresh food for dinner. So dinner is where I look at, okay, where's my protein coming from? And my husband is, as you can see, he's a big hunter. So we always have elk, venison. I'll have steaks in the freezer. I always have wild caught seafood in the freezer, everything. So I literally 20 minutes before I cook something, I'm like, what am I going to cook? But I start with the protein. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do scallops today. Great. So I get those out and then I figure out what do I want for my vegetables. So I always have fresh vegetables, but you can also use frozen vegetables. Frozen is amazing. Whatever I'm doing though, I use those. I get about, I don't know, between 8 and 15 grams of fiber from the veggies.
Hmm.
And I'll do just roasted with olive oil or avocado oil and some salt and pepper in the
Yep.
oven. And then I usually do a grain. So instead of rice or like bullshit grains. I do farro is a staple in our house. Do you use farro much?
I haven't. No.
Oh man, I'm telling dude, I'm gonna change your whole entire life, bro. Farro is one of those you have to go find it in the grocery store because they like to hide it, or you get the jerk like me who comes in and buys it all and then they have to restock it. So I'm like, Farro. Farro is amazing. It's got a nice crunch to it, so it's
Okay.
better than rice. It's got like a, I don't know, a nice little grain crunch to it. Really, really good stuff. I'll do black rice, I'll do chickpea pasta, things like that. High fiber, again, high
Yeah.
fiber.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so and then sauces. I love sauces. I like aiolis, I like hot sauces, I like marinades for my meats. So my family eats very well, very flavorful. I feel very bad for my future daughter-in-laws, but I will teach. I'm a loving woman. I will teach them. I will bring them under my wing. But yeah, or
Oh,
you know what? Better yet, I'm going to teach my boys. They'll be the chefs in the house. That'll be
let's
more like it.
go.
Yeah, let's go. So, but that's a day in the life. And then as far as dessert, because I do eat dessert every night, I'll have 2 or 3 squares of dark chocolate, or I'll have like a little ice cream cookie thing from Trader Joe's. Yeah, I love ice cream.
You ever had one
So
of those mochi balls?
I have, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not big. It's that rice paper that's like,
Oh, really? I
no,
love that.
I like a creamy mouthfeel, which it doesn't sound right, but that's what I go for. Yeah,
That's awesome. That's super helpful for people just to have the framework, like
yeah,
an
yeah.
idea to think through rather than these specific, well, eat this. It's like it's better to have the frameworks
Mhm.
and just learn it over time. Give yourself grace to like practice things and you might have to ask questions and can you pair with this and that's fine, but you have the framework and that's
Yeah,
that's the most important thing. At
yep.
least in my opinion, I think.
It is.
Okay, so we're at an hour. This has been awesome. I feel like we could keep chatting. This has been great.
Yeah.
But so for your Salt app, if anybody wants to train with you,
Mhm.
give them a quick, give me your elevator pitch for the Salt app.
Yeah. So my Salt app is basically at home where you can take it to the gym, but we do you'll need dumbbells, sometimes a barbell, if you want that anyways. Just simple equipment, bands, dumbbells will do it. But everything's under 45 minutes and it is focusing on getting your weights up. Like we do heavy weightlifting, which is such a joy for me to see these women that are doing at home stuff. Like I had to buy new dumbbells again. Thanks, Jenny. I'm like, yes.
Oh, you're
So
good.
Yeah, so we do heavy weight training. We do that metabolically forward hit, VO2 max hit
Hmm.
training, and we do mobility training. And it's 45 minutes to 15-minute sessions. You can find it all. But yeah, it's about having grace with yourself and seeing yourself just grow by that like little bit every single day. Be that ice cube that just is putting in the work and finally you'll see that progress. But that's that. And then my website, just in general, is Fit Fish Mom. I'm Jenny Fisher, Fit Fish Mom, but it's salt training app on Apple iOS or on the website.
That's awesome. Really, really cool. And so what was your Instagram handle at Jenny Fisher?
It's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube is Jenny Fisher Fitness.
Love it. Love
Yeah,
it. Well, this has been a pleasure having you on. You are
thank you. It's a lot of fun.
you're a wealth of knowledge, and I would love to have you back on in the future. We can chat some more. I think people are going to get a lot out of this. This was really, really
Yeah,
cool.
thanks, Colin. And keep doing what you're doing, by the way. Like it's very beneficial. One of the things I wanted to give you a little bit of kudos for is a lot of people start podcasts because they like to hear themselves talk,
Mm.
which is why I don't have a podcast because nobody needs that in the world. But you do a very good job of being inquisitive of other people's lives and really focusing on them and their story. And I just want to say that's very refreshing as a listener to your podcast. So keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. All right. Well, for those of you out there listening and watching, thank you for tuning in. Reach out to Jenny if you have any questions. As you can tell, she is extremely intelligent, very passionate, and great shape. So make sure you reach out and ask her any questions. But thank you guys for watching. And as always, keep moving forward.